Good morning. Welcome back. I don't know where the week's gone. I keep saying to people I've been in DC for a week, 10 days. It feels like that. I got here on Sunday and I feel like we've covered some ground, right? Thanks again to OWI for an amazing event. And again, this event feels to me like it's an old institution already, and this is just the second year that it's been in operation. So thanks to Travis and Pete and an amazing team of people. They've made me feel welcome and really embedded, and I'm sure that you're getting the same vibe. I want to talk about vibe. I was at a religious gathering in Sydney a couple of weeks ago, and a blockchain conference broke out. And I was asked by the conference organisers in the wrap-up, in the survey, to describe the event in one phrase. And look, I will share the phrase. I drafted the phrase in my head a couple of times, but I said, look, that blockchain event just felt too good to be true. And we'll talk more about blockchain later on today. If I was to, and I'm still drafting in my head how to describe this event, but the words that come to mind are social and community, and of course network. I mean, you know, everybody goes to these things to network. The networking has been seriously good for me. The social thing, we always know that conferences like this are social, and OWI is doing a great job of building a community. But there's something about identity technology that is really fundamentally social. And this ought not to surprise us, because identity is exactly about relationships and the people that we deal with and how we're known. And the thing that has interested me for my entire career has been this balls up of converting from the analogue to the digital in identity. We have not only made a mess of mechanical things like passwords and mainframe ideas of passwords and authentication, and taking those into the internet, but we've really taken a whole lot of false intuitions about how do we deal with people online in the same way as we deal with them in the analogue world. And a lot of my work is around that, and we may even unpack some of those ideas later on. Everything that I've seen this week has been social. The self-sovereign identity movement is intensely social. It's full of ideas like user centricity and users reclaiming agency and users having some sort of decent community that's mutually respectful online. I've just come from the Risk Salon breakfast. Risk Salon, I'll leave you to figure that out, risksalon.org. Really interesting new organisation, very social, dealing with incredibly deep issues, but at the same time forming networks where they can lubricate the exchange of information. Blockchain. I spent a day, about 18 months ago, this is an important little anecdote, I had been very cynical about blockchain technology for a long time, until I had the mixed fortune of spending a day locked in a car with my good friend Katrina Dow, who I think was here last year. And Katrina explained to me, you've got to understand, Steve, that blockchain is not about the technology. And I thought, here we go again, like nothing's about technology. But she said it's about the social side. Blockchain is emblematic of an unease that people have on the internet. And I have been riffing on that ever since. In fact, it seems that everybody's landing on the same place, because a technologist yesterday said in the session that he was trying to define blockchain, and the best definition he could come up with was hope. And half full, half empty, you can laugh about that. I actually take it seriously. I think that blockchain is a movement, and where it gets to in 4 or 5 years' time, who knows? Scott Galloway yesterday, on day one, what an amazing keynote. And he was talking about social issues at the biggest imaginable scale. He was talking about even matching capitalism to the social objectives that we're trying to get, and speculating, I think, with some cause and maybe some accuracy about whether or not the big companies will be broken up for social outcomes. At the other end of the scale, I was at the Pitch Fest, Startup Pitch Fest yesterday, amazing bunch of ideas, the hackathon, how those people could even function after 36 hours, let alone present some amazing apps, was pretty good. But one of the pitches that took my attention was the handwriting authenticator. Actually, how do you put a pin using a beautifully crafted, looked like wood, a pen. I thought my daughter, my 20-year-old daughter, who has discovered 35mm wet film photography, would be delightful, and she loves stationery. She loves notepaper and cellulose, and I thought she would really love that. So there's something, that goes to this whole issue of the slow movement. And, if your teenage kids are out there, there's every chance that they're rediscovering vinyl records and picnics and cooking. And to me, it is incredible. And a lot of our technology and identity is about that. The technology itself, like blockchain, is incredibly social, but the ideas and the problems that we're trying to solve are equally so. So I'm going to make a few remarks before I'm handing over to a really, really good keynote speaker that we've got this morning to start day 3. And I'll be seeing you some more during the day on some blockchain panels, and then we'll wrap up and give everybody a bit of an early mark around 2:30 this afternoon. So have a good day, everybody. And with that, I'm going to segue from slow movement to some reflections. I said that I've been reflecting on this analog to digital conversion and trying to work out how we're going to do identity better. And it turns out that I think that we in the room can be thinking even bigger than that, and we can be thinking about how we're going to make the data economy better, because what we can do with identity is a model for what we should be doing with data. The slow movement, right? We live in fascinating times. We yearn for simpler times, and there's incredible traction in literally getting back to the earth. And this is the hope of blockchain. This is the community side of blockchain. At the same time, there is this incredible anger, resentment. People are pissed off with the way that businesses have inverted everything. They know too much about us. What's going on? How do we regain control or ownership or agency or whatever the words are? The identirati, however, we in the room have been obsessed with identity ever since Peter Steiner produced the famous cartoon that Dave Birch has left us. Dave Birch famously says that this is the comfort zone of lazy consultants. And I never used the Steiner cartoon, except to make the point that it was never ever about identity, it was about provenance. And we've got to move away from that. We've got to completely upturn it. The only response that we identity engineers ever have to an identity problem is to lay on more identity. Every time there's a breach, we go, oh, we're going to have to get rid of the social security numbers and have something else that's secret. Let's add the CVV. I mean, the CVV was never supposed to be even typed into a machine, and here it is. We might as well have 19-digit credit card numbers, right? There was a Marx Brothers movie when, in frustration, Groucho Marx called down to room service and said, hello, send up more room. And we in the identity community, all we're doing is asking the identity services to go more and more and more down the wrong way. Now, we want more identity. We want more identity for less. So the only thing that the identirati has known for 15 years is federated identity. Wow, what an awful metaphor. We know what federations are like. We know how well they work. And yet this is still the best model that we've got for identity. I mean, come on. And what the hell are we here for? Identity. What do we really want to solve? What do we need to know about people in order to do business with them? We talked about context for 20 years in identity management, but we've never really nailed context. We've never really had the discipline to say, I want to deal with somebody right now, right here. What do I need to know about them? I don't need their identity 9 times out of 10. There is this incredibly strong movement across almost all aspects of our industry, from who you are to what you are. Our wallets are full of identities, right? Well, no, they're not. They're full of attributes, they're full of factoids, they're full of things that I need to assert about myself. One of the false intuitions that we have in identity, open up your purse or wallet. In my case, there's 25 Steve Wilsons all in the purse. They all seem to be the same. They've all got the same name. They're not Steve Wilsons. There are 25 different relationships that some character have got with Medicare and with banks and with service providers in my university. They all look the same, in the same way that every fish looks the same. Every fish is sort of torpedo-shaped and fins on the top and the bottom. You take a salmon, well, better example, take a shark, take a saltwater shark and drop it into a freshwater pond and it will die. Fish are evolved to different niches, just like identities are evolved to different niches. They look the same, but they're not. And the sooner we realise that it's not about my name, but it's about the things that are inside the card, that really matter. Now, lots of people do know this. The vectors of trust movement is all about moving away from simple one-dimensional levels of assurance to a much more complicated, what things are relevant, what dimension am I working in? The FIDO Alliance, despite the I, FIDO for 5 years has very assiduously confined itself to authentication and not identification. Now, as soon as I say those words, I know that they're technical and jargon, but FIDO is not about who you are, it's about what you are. Verified claims from W3C, attribute PKI, attribute certificates are on the rise again, moving away from identity. Sovereign Foundation, all about verified claims. You know, I was playing buzzword bingo all week and verified claims must have come up 10 or 20 times. Provenance is the other buzzword of the day. It's all about provenance. What do you need to know about somebody to do business with them? How are you going to get that knowledge that you need of them? How do you know the knowledge is true? And these are solved problems in the real world. It took America a long time to solve this problem, but the rest of the world, and now the States, has solved the problem of provenance in payment systems through chip. There's no provenance of credit card numbers on their own, but you know what? You don't need the provenance of the credit card number on its own if you can put it in a chip and digitally sign things with that attribute. Data is the new crude oil. Somebody yesterday disputed this metaphor, but I love it. It runs really deep, and it's going to inform my work for the next 5 years, I think. This is the oil field at Alabama Street on Huntington Beach in 1920, which is just under 100 years ago. In Nakamoto years, this is just a little bit older than the blockchain white paper. Now, oil has not gone away. In fact, there's more oil being mined today, vastly more than what we ever had back then. But the oil has been tamed. It's been put in its place. This is Huntington Beach today. We've made the oil orderly. We've put it into supply chains. We have figured out standards and processes and refineries and petrochemical. It's astonishing if you think about the journey of oil, which is the model for the journey of data. I said that the metaphor runs deep. So we've put oil into supply chains. When are we going to start thinking about data supply chains? When are we going to realise that there are no identity providers? Identity is in the eye of the relying party. Any business today that calls itself an identity provider is providing attributes. And the identity is an integration of all of those attributes. The relying party finally says, I know Steve Wilson to my satisfaction. It's all about the attributes. Now, what are attributes? They're just data. And this is the generalisation. This is what I think I'll be doing for the next few years, is going from identity to data. It's all about data in the most general sense, and it's all about the provenance of data in the most general sense. So what does infrastructure for the digital economy look like? And infrastructure, we're not just talking about AWS and cloud and 5 nines of availability or whatever. We're talking about the way that this technology gets tamed and domesticated and controlled, just like the oil derricks, controlled in an orderly society. Just think about the endpoint of the gasoline supply chain. Nobody in the Western world is allowed to sell gasoline on the corner out of an open container. We even are so structured and so orderly about gasoline that you've got to go to the gas station. So infrastructure for the data economy, the digital economy. This is all about standards and rules, and I'm a proud member of Kantara when it comes to rules. But deeper than that, it's about norms. We've got to change these social norms so that we stop just vomiting our data out, and the big companies are asking us to do this, and we need to change our habits. We need to be orderly about it. We need to stop having this moral panic, for example, in this part of the world about the GDPR. And when you've got Mark Zuckerberg, whether you trust him or not, saying on CNN, you know, I think me getting a bit regulated is probably not a bad idea, then that is an absolute light on the hill for the sort of order that we're talking about. So no panic about GDPR. GDPR, data protection, privacy. I shouldn't know more than I need to know. I should tell people what I need, what I know. I shouldn't be repurposing information for other ideas behind people's back. I should be getting rid of data when I'm done with it. That's the sort of order. That's GDPR in a minute. Now, don't ask me to do GDPR for more than a minute, because I can't quote you chapter and verse, but I can tell you about the vibe of the thing, and the vibe of the thing is about order. And if we're going to have a digital economy, a data economy, then we're going to have order from the bottom, from the kindergartens, all the way up to the standards and the data centres, and the identity and the attribute providers. And that's my vision for the future. Thank you for listening. With that, thank you. I'm going to hand over to Ross from OWI, Vice President of Risk Management, to introduce our guest speaker. Hope you all have a great day, and I will see you as we go. Cheers.